Organic food is a $2 billion industry in Australia and it's only growing. We're nearing the end of Organic Awareness Month, where the sector is hoping to showcase the benefits of clean produce, while there are also calls for greater regulation. Niki is the Chief Executive of the Australian Organic Limited, the industry's peak body, and joins me now. Welcome to the program.
Hi Dan, thanks for having me.
How's this month gone in trying to raise awareness of organic and why it's important?
Yeah, look, it's the seventh year that we've been running this campaign, and this year's ambassadors, Andy Allen, who's from MasterChef, and Annika Molesworth and Mike Benny, have allowed mainstream consumers to really understand a bit more about what certified organic means or organic means here in Australia. We have one of the most challenging platforms in relation to understanding organic, so it's really important that September every year we talk about what to look for when you're buying organic, to know that you're really getting what you're paying for.
That challenge that you refer to there must be that there are so many companies across the board who claim to be organic. Is that the kind of crux of the issue here?
Yeah, look, at the moment, it's not a mandatory requirement to be certified in the domestic market when claiming organic on your packaging. It is mandatory when you're exporting to other countries around the world. So one of the challenges we face in Australia is how do we change that? Because we're the last developed country in the world not to have that consistency, and it confuses consumers. So we know with a recent report and research we did with consumers was that nearly a third of people have been fooled in the last 12 months when buying organic products, as in they haven't been certified. They may have had simply one single ingredient that is certified within the packaging, but the packaging claims are promoting that single ingredient claim over the rest of the product. So that remains something that can't be changed at the current framework, because it's not mandatory, it's a voluntary process. And we have over 3,200 operators in Australia who do volunteer to be certified to ensure the integrity of their product. And so when you're looking for an organic product, look for a certification mark. The logo behind me, the bud, is the most recognised mark in Australia. 62% of Australian consumers know that. And when you're talking about just organic, it's 73%. So if you're ever confused, look for this mark, because it'll probably be the one that you see on the shelf or in your local grocer area.
I want to find out about the regulation process in a moment, but how is it that Australia is so far behind the rest of the world, or at least on this domestically?
It's a very good question. Look, we have a national standard that the government owns, and it sits under the Department of Agriculture, and next year is actually the 30th anniversary of that standard being implemented. Now, at the time, we were actually one of the first countries outside of the European countries to implement a national standard for organic. So we were quite cutting edge at the time, and so for us, it was actually meant to be implemented in the domestic market then, but it just didn't happen. And so over the last near 30 years, there's been a whole host of greyness, and brands who have organic in their brand name are allowed to trade that may not even be anything near organic. And so at the moment, it is a real difficult landscape for consumers to navigate, which is why we've been putting a lot of work in over the last 3 years to talk to government around why it's so important to balance out this consistency. And we were lucky over the last couple of years to have that listened to, and there is a process underway at the moment to have that as a further discussion that's being led by the Agricultural Minister, David Littleproud.
Is there a sense of when that process would come to an end and when that regulation would become mandatory?
Well, look, it's an important thing to know that obviously legislation or regulation doesn't happen swiftly, and for good reasons. There needs to be a load of stakeholder consultation. And so the important thing is that we get to the end with the best result, not to the quickest. And so that has begun a bit over 3 years ago. And so we're hopeful that we'll get some sort of decision in the next 12 months around whether we will be able to move forward with those next steps. And for businesses out there who do want to use organic as part of their claim, there would be an extended sort of rollout of this so that they wouldn't be impacted in a negative way should we be able to work out a solution that would require it to be mandatory. So in conversion products in the producer space can take up to 3 years. So it wouldn't just be a hard line. It would really be about how do businesses like ours, as the peak body, help broader industry stakeholders through the process, because this industry is growing every year. Even with COVID, we saw, despite the financial challenges for some people who didn't buy organic, we still had over 50% of Australian consumers buying organic products. And out of that 56% that was buying, 37% of those people actually bought more products in the last 12 months. So we know there is a great demand for organic, but the inconsistency provides us confusion. It lacks credibility for operators. And then the flow-on effect is actually that it limits our ability to export. So operators who choose to export need to pay for additional certification into the country of destination. And often exporters don't just export to one location. So you have to have Australian certification to get out of the country, and then you'll have to have the multitude of different country certifications to get into them. We only have a few equivalencies because often the barrier is that we don't have a consistent marketplace here within Australia.
Niki, what do you reckon is driving this consumer boom that we're seeing in Australia?
Yeah, look, it's the last number of surveys we've done with consumers over probably the last 4 or 5 years have indicated that 2/3 of consumers are concerned about health, and that's one of the reasons why they go into organic. So organic production doesn't allow the use of synthetic chemicals, pesticides or herbicides. There's no genetic modification allowed. There's also no additives, no antibiotics and no hormones. So people are choosing that from a health perspective. They don't want those additives. And I guess we're in the middle of the largest health crisis the current world's ever seen. So, the growing interest in this space, as well as the technology that people have within their hands, it doesn't, consumers want to know what they're putting in or on their body, and organic provides, under the standardised process, a very transparent way of knowing what is in the product that you're consuming.
Yeah, so by that metrics, I reckon you're probably expecting to see the industry to continue to grow then.
Look, here and globally, those trends continue to demonstrate that. And I think once we provide a really consistent regulatory framework, that will help us grow. It's certainly not about adding extra burden. It's actually about reducing all the red tape and certainly the economic issues that can happen when you have to have a multitude of certification to access markets.
Chief Executive of the Australian Organic Limited, the industry's peak body, Niki Ford, thanks so much. Great to have you along.
Thank you, Dan.